Namaste everyone. Thank you for joining in this ongoing video series on Rahu and Ketu in the houses. And this series has been covering Rahu in the first house. We have completed Ketu in the first house, Rahu in the second house, Ketu in the second house. And then yesterday we looked at Ketu in the third house, and today we'll be looking at Rahu in the fourth house. Okay. But then before we get into the meat of the topic, kindly subscribe to the channel. Please share with your friends and family if you find the content and the knowledge useful. And please leave behind your feedback in the comment section at the end of each video. Okay, so this is about Rahu in the fourth house. Now, whenever Rahu goes into the fourth house, Ketu, of course, will go to the 10th house. And this combination is known as Shankhapala. Okay, and Shankhapala in the mythology of the Nagas, it suggests a Naga with a strong nesting instinct, often establishing ethnic boundaries of some kind or another, sometimes reinforced by religious ceremony or ritualistic pujas. Okay. So, for example, Shankapala will say that if you come under attack, always pull the wagons into a circle. And because, Rahu represents the focal point in your life, so this placement often indicates that there is a focus on mental health and sukha or happiness, which is realized through various forms of security, for example, academic education as a foundation of one's career, family roots, or even the physical home. Such a native can be a homeowner, landholder, or patriot, for whom property, including vehicles, is his or her security. And despite an obsession with fences and borders, the native typically experiences problems with property, with vehicles, with countrymen, or even with his or her own mother. Okay. Such a native may be at war within himself or herself, or with authority figures, a conflict that is sometimes reflected via physical symptoms in the chest, because the fourth house rules the heart area. Okay. So what does Rahu do in the fourth house, and how does it behave? What are the psychological aspects of Rahu in the fourth house? Let's have a look at it. So we know that Rahu represents desire and obsession, while Ketu denotes ambivalence and detachment. And with Rahu in the fourth and Ketu in the 10th, this can indicate a bias for establishing a home base, property rights, patriotism, and tribal security, sometimes at the cost of assuming public responsibilities, allowing governmental oversight, or respecting law and order. The fourth house now represents the ground, the stambha upon which the lagna is planted. And it's literally our foundation, For example, in a residence we call home, or metaphorically in the depths of our psychological self. And whether the mundane midnight or the midnight of the soul, here is where, that means the fourth house is where we experience security or its lack. Now, Rahu in the fourth house, with Rahu in the fourth house, Ketu occupies the 10th, which is the karma sthana, the place of one's karma, embracing the rites of passage. Because Ketu is like Mars, we expect warrior-like characteristics, for example, ambition for conquest, boldness, courage in the face of opposition, and the cruelty to cut through obstacles and to slay the enemy. Okay. But then this can go sideways as well. Rahu and Ketu are both tamasic, but with Ketu at the midheaven, it assumes greater visibility in carving out a role. And because Ketu is also ambivalent, the native may care too little for his or her reputation and revert to self-serving behavior. So, as a result, such a native may indulge in wicked deeds which can be detrimental to his or her name. The fourth house, as we know, rules the breast and the chest cavity, that includes the heart, lungs, liver, and upper portion of the stomach. And because the lunar nodes provoke eclipses that interrupt the natural light of the sun and moon, placement of Rahu in the fourth house can indicate irregularities among those vital organs. Okay. For example, the heart may be subject to arrhythmia, which indicates an irregular pulse. Okay. The lungs may suffer from asthma, which of course is an intermittent suffocation. And the liver's production of enzymes may fluctuate. Okay. And in Ayurveda, the stomach is regarded as the mother of the body. It may regurgitate the gastric fluid into the esophagus, causing heartburn. And even the phrase acidic reflux implies a reversal of the natural order, something associated with the backward movement of the nodes. Okay. Now, Psychologically, the native may suffer from mental disturbance. Okay, in Vedic psychology, the fourth house represents manas, an aspect of the mind that is concerned with sense perception and glandular regulation. So this is analogous to a computer's operating system, allocating memory and interfacing with programs. And while the buddhi handles analytical tasks of the higher mind, the manas operates on a primitive level, monitoring sensory input, registering likes and dislikes, and forming personality. And since Rahu is a contrarian amongst the grahas, always retrograde, so its presence in the fourth house can indicate a potential for mental aberrations. Okay, and in the context noted, as I said, this might only affect the gland regulating functions of the brain, and minor irregularities of this limbic intelligence might provoke only occasional malfunctions of the body. For example, heart palpitations, unquenchable thirst, or night sweats. Okay, now you must demand you must demand more evidence for serious mental disturbances. Okay, if you're predicting Rahu in the fourth house, don't predict mental disturbance right away. All right, because Rahu in the fourth house is one astrological signature that either the fourth lord or the moon, which is the karaka for manas, on the nodal axis will help to build a case. Okay, and if the fourth lord or the moon is in a Rahu ruled nakshatra, okay, for example, in Ardra or in Shatabhishak, then that would give the manas a nudge towards the edge. Okay, it would mean a bordering mental problem, or a bordering case of mental disturbance. Okay, and although the condition of the manas, we are not dealing with the condition of the manas here, it takes a lot of destabilization to drive the individual from neurosis to psychosis. Okay, and for that, we might need Saturn's influence on the fourth house, the fourth lord, or the moon to predict such a condition. Okay, and such a condition may also result if the fourth lord or the moon is compromised by sign or house position. Okay, so in extreme cases, as I said, all of that which I've discussed might apply. Okay, now bearing more serious mental ailments, Rahu in the fourth might make the native very thick-headed, closed to new ideas or perspectives. Such a native may have a bias for wrong thinking, preponderance of emotion over logic, as commonly seen in personal relationships, financial management, and political, allegiances. Such a native may also be unable to perceive reality. For example, there could be an illusion that tricks the eye and thereby the mind into seeing something that is not real. Okay, so there is this old rope versus snake, conundrum, which is an example of how a person might not correctly discern reality. Now, on the other hand, in the context of mental health, a delusion is a fixed false belief resistant to reason or confrontation with actual fact, as in paranoid delusion. Okay, and the fourth house also rules family. It rules the mother, who is a living symbol of the physical home and the central point of familial love. So with Rahu in the fourth, the mother may be fickle, irregular, peculiar, or even strange. Okay, such a lady may be obsessive in an overly protective way, like a helicopter parent who takes parenting to extremes, or such a mother may have a laissez-faire attitude, providing too little protection or structure to the family. Okay, so there may be something compulsive, distinctive, fascinating, or powerful about the mother, who can be adventurous, exotic, and unpredictable. Okay, and less kindly, such a lady may be a poseur of sorts, seeking status beyond her experience, which she craves as a form of legitimacy. Okay, a false entitlement to privileges may center on home ownership, land deeds, or intense patriotism. Okay, and because Rahu is a proxy, okay, it behaves as the proxy of Saturn, it behaves as the proxy of the fourth lord by its presence in the fourth house. So Rahu in the fourth can suggest a surrogate mother, an adaptive mother, or a stepmother, or another family member who replaces a birth mother who died or left the marriage and family. Okay, so such a native with Rahu in the fourth may take pride in his ancestry, whose roots portray a strong affinity for certain lands. Okay, but sometimes there is a shadow on the family, a past failure the native feels honor bound to overcome. Okay, such a native may show excessive pride in his or her family reputation, or be obsessed with keeping up the family business, perhaps in hopes of achieving whatever his or her parents could not. Okay. Now, Rahu in the fourth seeks privilege through property ownership, agricultural custodianship, environmental protection, ancestral lands, and patriotism in the name of homeland security. Such a person can be a homeowner, landholder, or patriot for home property, including vehicles, is his or her security. But then Rahu has an appetite which is insatiable. Okay, so such a native may become overextended with more land than can be occupied, with bigger houses than needed, or more properties that can be managed, or even more vehicles that he or she can use. Okay, now the psychologically vulnerable person will erect boundaries of every sort to protect his or her vital space. And as a result, the native wants to establish physical boundaries, like borders, fences, fields of fire, moats, ramparts, walls around the property, perhaps his or her area, and even the environment for security. And for peace of mind, such a native may also want legal boundaries to protect family or tribe or even the constituency. Okay, so Rahu have in the fourth house, or people having Rahu in the fourth house, they identify themselves with bouncers, caretakers, environmentalists, groundskeepers, housekeepers, landholders, property owners, stewards, and watchmen. And despite his or her obsession with fences and borders, such a native can often experience problems with property, vehicles, or even his or her own countrymen. Okay, so with Rahu in the fourth house, such people may be, maybe obsessed with finding a community that feels like home. And searching for an elusive Shangri-La can make one eternally restless, like someone who spends much time on a dating app like Tinder. That excessive choice makes a commitment to a relationship unlikely. Okay, so such a person ends up feeling unrest in his or her heart, and he or she may never feel completely at home. Now, as regards to his home life, Rahu in the fourth isn't always domestic. Okay, Rahu is a notorious wanderer. So there can be many moves in a life. Okay, people in military service or the diplomatic corps are often subject to transfer, sometimes overseas. Now, the fields of academia and professional sports often demand relocations too. And even if not influenced by family, the native may enjoy the gypsy life, living here and there with little thought of settling down. Okay. For example, a transient home life as a traveling salesperson, long haul trucker, or someone who just wants to see the world has its own appeal for some. Okay. So, a wandering Rahu in the fourth can also indicate property in exotic getaway locations. So, whatever one calls home, that personal living space can be diverse and eclectic, especially when sharing quarters with people that they haven't chosen. For example, the communal life of college students. Okay. And despite a deep sense of roots, the native may also open up his home to strangers. Okay. Now, Rahu in the fourth house can be opportunistic, and such an opportunistic Rahu can indicate people who, in return of legitimate right, who, in the name of legitimate right, appropriate property which is not their own. For example, house squatters, cattle rustlers, homesteaders, land speculators, and conmen who commit property deed theft. And because Rahu is oily and smoky, so in the fourth house, it can indicate a polluted home environment. For example, from a coal or oil or wood burning stove or furnace in the home or a neighborhood that's downwind or downstream of industrial factories, contributing to air or water pollution. Okay. The fourth house also rules vehicles, as we know. So the native can pursue status and privilege through trucks, cars, boats, planes, all the more so if they can be utilized in transporting natural resources or patrolling physical boundaries. Such a native may also own a motorhome fitted with all the creature comforts so that he or she can enjoy the luxuries of home even when on the road. Okay. The fourth house is also associated with education at a basic level, typically up to including high school. And because Rahu is malefic and murky, this could imply a spotty education. Okay. And if the native's education is interrupted or incomplete, such a native is vulnerable to career setbacks. Okay. And, when the quest for happiness or sukha is blocked, such a native may come to realize the value of education in creating security. Okay. So after a fall from position, they may retrench, perhaps starting education all over again. And since Rahu indicates foreigners, it might indicate that the native's educational credentials are from another country or in a subject area from a foreign culture, or a foreign teacher in a non-traditional subject playing a role in his or her education. Okay. Now, less positively, since Rahu is opposed here, it may suggest the native's education isn't entirely legitimate or is being misinterpreted for the sake of residency, status, or employment. Okay. Now, under the best of circumstances, Rahu's presence in the fourth can establish a drive for education, a passion for schooling and academic accomplishments, seeking status and prestige through successive certificates, diplomas and degrees. That means the more the better. Okay, so this is how natives having fourth house Rahu behave. All right, so that's it from me in this video. Do let me know in the comment section whether you resonated with the same, and if you do have Rahu in the fourth house, do let me know if you agree with the interpretation. So that's it from me. And if you want a consultation or a reading regarding your chart, you're always welcome to reach out at the number given in the description box. Namaste. Om Gurave Namaha.